King Saul fell on his sword when it all went wrong, and Joseph's brothers sold him down the river for a song. And Sonny Liston rubbed some tiger balm into his glove. Some things you do for money, and some you do for love, love, love.
Hello. I hope you're all having a wonderful spooky season. In fact, if you look, you can see that my setup is on a pile of horror DVDs. I'll make a letterbox link or something. So, I am back on Jake's channel to talk about my favourite band, the Mountain Goats. California 4-piece, set up in 1991 by John Darnielle. They are sort of an indie folk, indie rock outfit, occasionally lo-fi. Their most relevant ex-member is Rachel Ware, who's in the band from 1992 to 95. She also appears in Rian Johnson's concert film of the life of the world to come, and also contributes vocally to Heretic Pride. It also features Peter Hughes on bass, John Worster on drums, and Matt Douglas on woodwind, of all things. They also have 18 studio records that we'll be talking about today, from Sopolotti Machine through to songs for Pierre Chauvin, released this year. We are not going to include Getting Into Knives, because I had been working on this for a long time, even before that album was announced. Although I am going to be reviewing it on the next episode of the podcast, which you can watch. Up until 2002's All Hail West Texas, all of their albums had at least some songs, if not the whole record, that was recorded straight into a tape cassette recorder on a boombox that John owned. So you'll hear tape hiss, you'll hear the churning cogs of the boombox on some of them, and you'll hear incredibly lo-fi recordings. Of course, they went back to this aesthetic with their last record, songs for Pierre Chauvin. Other key releases for me include 2006's Babylon Springs EP, which is one of my favourite Mountain Goat songs. Sometimes I Still Feel the Bruise. There you can also find alternate recordings for songs on Sunset Tree, like Broom People and Hast Thou Considered the Tetrapod. They're actually considered to be slightly better than the Sunset Tree recordings of those songs. I also want to highlight the 2008's Black Pear Tree EP with Khaki King. There's a wonderful song about Mario on it, and returning the favour for Rian Johnson shooting the concert film of the life of the world to come. John composed a song to tie into The Last Jedi, which is called, let's check this, it's long, The Ultimate Jedi Who Wastes All the Other Jedi and Eats Their Bones. So before we get into it, some of these rankings may annoy hardcore fans. I understand why. I just want you all to know that I like all of these albums. I do not think the Mountain Goats have an album that I would rate less than a 7, including their new one. And there isn't a Mountain Goats album that doesn't have a track that is essential, really. They have albums that aren't essential, but every album has probably at least one song on it that is essential listening. Yeah, so that's also in case John listens to this. I love you, John. Sorry, I just think some of your albums are better than other albums. Really, this is more of a ranking of how much each album means to me personally. So, let's crack on. What is our first record?
Set it on fire with your face in plain view.
Okay, ranked at 18, 1995 Sweden, their second album. This is actually the record that I scored as the record that best represents me on an online personality quiz. So, the moral of this story is don't trust personality quizzes. The gimmick on this album is that every song on it was released under a completely different title in Sweden. So, California Song was released as The Girl Who Was His Friend Said Goodbye. The opening track, the recognition scene, is We Were Going Home Before the Rain. Very, very deep, John. Very deep. What really marked out the Mountain Goats tapes as being important is that they were very loud. John has described it like the guitar just takes up all of the available real estate on any one cassette recording, and he's also said that anyone watching shows in those days would think he was going to have a heart attack on stage, and here we already begin to see him experiment with much slower songwriting, much more personal songwriting that is more involved with capturing the poetry of a moment than really hitting you in the face with emotion. It opens very strongly. The recognition scene, the opener, is one of the best songs on the record, and track 2, Downtown Seoul, painting this beautiful picture of melancholy and sort of melancholic aesthetic beauty, which is something that the Mountain Goats perfect very well in their songwriting, taking place in Korea, of course. Using a very specific place as a setting to evoke emotion due to cultural associations is something that a lot of Mountain Goats records do, be they the 1-2 punch of All Hail West Texas and Tallahassee, or songs like Going to Georgia, or even this record, Sweden. There are good songs, and to be honest, less good songs. And this is really getting to the heart of why this album features Bottom, even though I think it's good. It's just kind of unrefined, which is the appeal, I understand, of these early lo-fi recordings of the Mountain Goats. It lacks the punch of Zoppalooza, it lacks the precision and beautiful storytelling of later lo-fi records like The Coroner's Gambit and All Hail West Texas. Some Swedish Trees is a bit of an unrefined, unstructured, chaotic mess, which I understand is the point, but it just doesn't work. It doesn't come together, and it's just a bit of a grating listen. John has yet to refine his lo-fi techniques. The mixes feel distant and cold, and I understand it's quite hard to mix on a boombox, but he got better at it later, I think. Here, it feels very hard to get involved with the songs. It feels very hard to force yourself to pay attention, which you really have to do to appreciate these songs, because the mixes are so uninviting. And the additions of instrumentation from other band members only occasionally work, and more often than not don't, and feel kind of incoherent. It's in ways that get solved on later lo-fi records. Flashing Lights finds John experimenting with incorporating melodies and harmonies and dissonance into his guitar playing, venturing outside of the traditional EAB 1-5-7 guitar structure that John had really made his trademark at that time. September 16th, XXX, love, exclamation mark, love, exclamation mark. Okay, Sufjan. Samples, bet you don't know. In general, these early samples on these Mountain Goats records don't work for me. They feel like a stylistic calling card that doesn't actually add anything to the songwriting itself, for me. The electric guitars on Prana Ferrex, they really work, and Going to Queens tries to incorporate harmonies into the singing. It just feels dissonant and wrong. However, the bass and guitar work on the song Tolland Man works really well, just because they play tighter together. The chemistry between the instruments is there in ways it isn't in other songs on the record. California Song is an atmospheric, charming, breezy, naive kind of love song, and it's a bop, really. It's the biggest bop on the record. Send Me an Angel is brooding and threatening, even if it uses some pretty tired musical ideas. Yeah, so all in all, it's just a lot of filler, really. This album is 19 songs long, and most of them feel unfinished. Look, at least on these records, if you don't like a song, a new one will be along in like 30 seconds, because these are all pretty short. Overall pleasant, but John must do better. What's next?
Meanwhile, out where nothing starts.
Right, so at number 17, their fourth album, 1997's Full Force Galesburg. There's almost all of the same problems and shortcomings of Sweden, so I'll try to be brief. But it's better because it's shorter, I suppose. Part of what puts me off this album, I think, is just that cover art makes me want to vomit. The lo-fi style of recording works a lot better on this record, using sort of tones and styles that would reach its pinnacle on All Hail West Texas. It demonstrates an increasing willingness to explore atmosphere and beautiful lyric. Snow Owl, which is one of the best Mountain Goat songs ever, brings harmonica in, and it really fleshes out the instrumentation in lovely ways, like bringing in a really beautiful guitar melody. A song like Masha brings in some musical ideas that the Mountain Goats would probably perfect later, with much less sharp songwriting. And Chinese House Flowers shows a willingness to experiment with style. It sounds frankly awful. Too much of the real estate, the sonic real estate, is taken up by the very gratingly recorded guitars, and the guitars just take up too much space on the record for the vocals to really engage at all. Like I said about the previous record, so many of these songs feel just kind of boring and unfinished, and I just kind of want better. With that being said, I still really enjoy listening to this record. It just has a really strong vibe, where even when I'm listening to songs that I don't really love, like Twin Human Highway Flares, it just makes me feel very happy and relaxed, even if I think the songs themselves aren't finished. Just calms me in a really nice way. Other songs that really bring out the best of this record are songs like A Weekend in Western Illinois, which has wonderful organ tones, Evening in Stalingrad, which has really luscious strings, and the closer is All Here in Brownsville, which is this sort of very rocky song, which feels a bit shambolic and thrown together, but it's just really fun. I feel like that song is the pinnacle of what the album is sort of trying to aim for in general, and it's the last song. We should just listen to that. Okay, what's next?
No one broke D.B. Cooper's fall.
Okay, this is a controversial pick because people really love this record. I think it's pretty good. This is Goths, their 16th record from 2017, and it's my least favourite of this sort of trilogy of very niche concept records that they were doing at the time with Beat the Champion and League of Dragons. Famously, this record has no guitars on it, but that's not a stumbling block for me. It just means that the album has this really original sound that the Mountain Goats haven't previously explored. I think my only real problem is that too many of the songs on it really blend together for me, because without the guitars, there's only so many songwriting techniques that John breaks out here, and when it really works and he does something that does feel like its own idea, it just contrasts so strongly with the rest of the record that just kind of really bleeds together for me. So aside from the no guitars thing, the actual concept here is that it's about goth culture and real life goths, some fictional goths, just goth culture in general. It opens with Rain in Soho, which is an absolute top tier Mountain Goat song. Down, 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 down. It just really works. It has this apocalyptic vibe. Nothing else the Mountain Goats had done before or since really sounds like it. It just has this piano melody that almost feels like post-punky, like I'd expect like Nick Cave to drop a vocal on it. On something like Your Murder Ballads or, Let Love In, that kind of era of Nick Cave. For being a song about goths, it has this really imposing gothic atmosphere, it feels haunted. And John's nasal singing on the chorus, double track, just pierces it in this really sharp and abrasive way. This really makes the song feel like you're like on the Lost Highway in David Lynch's Lost Highway, and there are ghosts chasing you. It has this really beautiful harmony as well. I think they use this instrument called a celesta at the end for the little closing outro to it, and it's just beautiful. It's beautiful. The next song is another favourite of mine. Andrew Eldritch is Moving Back to Leeds, which has been a very personal song for me for a long time, as someone who has moved about a lot in the last few years and given up on a fair few dreams and opportunities. This song about going home after failing is too real. It's too real. This song it feels like a ditty, but it has these incredibly haunting, evocative images of see the children bound for London. They'll all be back to everybody tests the membrane, but no one pushes through. Or stuff like, there's a rusted fog machine in a concrete storage space, let a number of combinations with no meaning on its face. They don't make these anymore. It's a wooden coach and four. No one will even steal it if you leave it by the door. There's no sign to mark it's going, no tombstone for its grave. There will be goodbyes by dozens, so practice being brave. That's just incredibly sad. And the metaphor of the fog machine, just very tragic more than anything else. And that dichotomy of beauty in the aesthetic qualities of the music and just really depressing lyrics is sort of a trademark of the Mountain Goats, which they have broken in interesting ways, and sort of recent records like in League of Dragons have tried to subvert that image of what the Mountain Goats do, but we'll get onto that later. For those who don't know, by the way, Andrew Eldritch was a member of the band the Sisters of Mercy. This song also highlights a key aspect of this record in the development of the Mountain Goats, which is an increased focus on bass melody and basses really driving the melodic hooks of the song, which comes really into focus on the fourth track, We Do It Different on the West Coast, which when John's doing these kind of like very fun descriptions of different music cultures in different towns and cities. The bass is really doing all of the work, and then when you get the interlude before the chorus, bum, ba-da, bum, bum. That's the hook of the song more than anything else. It's that bass line, which is a really exciting thing to see the band doing. This song also explores so many quirky small town subcultures. It's just very charming for someone who's been in many small towns. But then we run into some problems on the album. A song like Unicorn Tolerance, which has a fun groove, but I just find it kind of vapid and vacuous, and it means something. I don't necessarily understand it. Maybe I'll understand it when I'm older, or I had to be there. But I don't know about that, Chief. Stench of the Unburied, a very metal horror Mountain Goats song title. Also feels slightly interested in concept above execution, in the way some of the other songs on this record do, where the whole idea of what the song's about, what the album's about, takes precedence over it being a fun album. Yeah, it has a killer hook, and the synths are beautiful, but I actually remember zilch about the song, and I've listened to this album a few times to research this video. Wear Black, when it's like conceptually beautiful. When I hear the lyrics, when I read the lyrics, and I think about what it's about, and I partner that with the quality of the music, I realise how beautiful this song is and should be, and people perceive it to be. When I listen to it, I feel nothing. I feel nothing. It has this wonderful soul feel, and the lyrics are beautiful. It's about the goth culture of like wearing black and the alternative culture of wearing black to represent a myriad of emotions, and this kind of rejection of culture and almost like aesthetic nihilism. It's not aesthetic nihilism, more like aesthetic absurdism, where you're just diving in a celebratory way into your dark emotional sides, and in the way that is typical of the Mountain Goats, addressing them and befriending them and embracing them. Many of my problems and compliments are the same for the rest of the album. The bass work is astonishing, the synth work's great, the concept is interesting, but I feel nothing, and I remember nothing. So I have notes for the rest of the songs, but there's no point going over them. I remember and feel nothing. I feel nothing. You see what I mean? Like, even when these albums don't live up to how good I want them to be, there are songs on them that I think are essential. And this album is the best example of that. Right, what's next?
I have 2 big hands and a heart pumping blood.
Number 15, Zopilote Machine. Am I pronouncing that right? Zopilote Machine. Mountain Goats' debut album from 1994. This one also has 19 songs. Just saying, but they're all, the average song length is less. It means that it's more tolerable. Yeah, it opens with the very pushing song, Alpha Incipiens, paints this very chaotic image through evoking romance in a crumbling world, holding on tight as love whirls you around. A very typical Mountain Goats musical idea. There's lots of dissonance, lots of swing, lots of chaos, lots of fun. Track number 2. It has a very good hook, and a very lonely vibe, but feels slightly insubstantial. And I think that's true of most of the songs on this album. On average, the lyricism is there, and the punch of the music is there. It just doesn't have the consistency and the tightness that I expect a better Mountain Goats record. I hate to say it again, but lots of these songs feel unfinished. There's just not the real potent storytelling of John's best records, and it's really a problem of they made the other records too good. So I listen to this and I just want to feel like the feeling I get of their best aggressive songs. Like the penultimate song of this record, Going to Georgia, another classic Mountain Goat song, which does have that punch in the gut feeling that you want from the Mountain Goat songs that are most loud. And John doesn't really like playing the song anymore because he finds the image that the song evokes of that sort of romantic violence, just for the power of the image. He finds it a bit distasteful in the sort of gun culture, school shooting culture that America's found itself in. And I understand why. I still think the song fucking rules. I love the riff. I love the way that very standard chords are played to make them sound shimmering. I love the spoken word interludes. I love the story. It's just so evocative and powerful, and I think it's pretty stellar. Okay, number 14.
I've been listening to the wind chime.
Nothing for Juice. Their third record from 1996. Again, very, very similar comments. This album has excesses. It's probably more consistent, probably better recorded, but I just want it to be better. I just want it to be so much better. It's still good. I remember nothing about this album, so I'm going to be relying on my notes a lot for this review. It opens with Then the Letting Go, which has these very beautiful guitar tones, very well recorded, very well performed. Very evocative lyrics. Height, the second track, sees John go more of a Nick Cave style thing, much more of a murder ballads type thing. But the actual song in its totality doesn't really amount to a hill of beans. Alpha Double Negative, going to Catalina, having subtitles on your songs now, has a wonderful vibe, even if the lyrics aren't very involving. Hellhound on My Trail brings in very eerie but amateurishly played synths to provide an almost bedroom pop aesthetic to the song, which makes a nice change of pace on the record. Alabama Nova has this very lovely riff and a real driving country rock vibe, with a big melancholic harmony-driven chorus. There's a very wonderful, almost comedic pause in it, which I'm here for. The Mountain Goats, as they go on, will experiment with space and pausing more, and I really like that aspect of what they do. Moon and Sound has this pulsating bass line, and eerie chorus, with absolutely brilliant, very threatening electronic guitars. It's probably the best integration of electronic guitars on one of these early records. They only bring it in as an overtone, and that's super effective, that kind of restraint. It's a shame that the whole song is mixed like ass. My battery died, and I had to reframe my camera because I realised the shot was crap, and then life happened, so this is many hours later. Where was I? Overall, nothing for Juice. While this album has some of the Mountain Goats' best aesthetic work, the lack of cohesion or finished songs, and the presence of filler, troubles me. It feels like so much pasting over cracks. Right, number 13, The Coroner's Gambit from turn of the century 2000. This album is a real maturing moment for the band in many ways. Many of the songs were written about this singer called Ross Williams, who ended his life 2 years before the release of the album. And if you listen to those songs, they're some of the best on the album, especially Blue Jays and Cardinals, which feels like this like anthemic celebration of a life, and something like Shadow Song, which is so beautiful and melodic in its guitar playing. It's a really lovely riff they've worked out on the acoustic guitar. Just a very good song overall. The album opens with Jaipur, which samples Haunted House Blues by Bessie Smith. It was one of the more lo-fi songs on the record. It's one of the more aggressive. References Swing Low Sweet Chariot in its lyrics. The voices tend to top out the recordings, which creates this really fuzzy vibe, while still being quite abrasive. Yeah, the Alphonse Mambo has beautiful harmonies and very lovely vibe built with organs. And the Island Garden song mirrors the melodic choices of Up the Wolves. Instead of finding peace in the pure and feeling rage of anger like that song does, this rejects anger. So the line "throwing off the dead weight" emphasizes this different outlook to the material, about rejecting anger and finding peace in tranquility, which is also a thing worth expressing. This song, like a lot of the album, makes great use of space in a way that John is always quite adept at doing, particularly the highlight, There Will Be No Divorce, which is one of my favourite Mountain Goat songs. This is absolutely beautiful. The way that it creates this story of the relationship it's depicting, while never actually describing anything in literal terms. This is all bringing images together to not create a literal picture, but an emotional picture of feeling in a moment that gives you so much of an idea about where their relationship is at in general. It's just absolutely beautiful. This album is not exactly a bold new step for the band. As they're about to really move away from their sound, this feels like they are reaching towards the pinnacle of what they can do with this aesthetic. And it's probably their most honed crop of songs up until this point by quite a long way. I really like Coroner's Gambit. Going back to it was lovely. Really got me to appreciate this album more. And I think all of these albums are growers, actually. Every single Mountain Goats album has hugely grown on me since I first heard it. So you could probably ask me in a week and these rankings would change. In fact, when I had my rankings set and I listened to all of them again to make notes, and my ranking changed again. Isn't that fun? What's next? At number 12, Get Lonely. This is an album that John said they really made for themselves. This is between The Sunset Tree, which is a fan favourite record, and Heretic Pride, which is way more pop than either of them. So it feels a bit like an odd duck, but you can also see that this is one of John's most personal records. It's a very appropriate title. It's a very lonely, bummed out record. While Sunset Tree approached very bleak material in a very joyous way, this isn't like that. Much more dour. It opens with the song World Sage, which is a peaceful folk ballad. John has said that this song is about becoming kind of disassociated from reality or in life and just having this existential solitude, just wandering through this countryside setting as this loner away from society. And whilst John in life, in his speaking, has definitely denounced his characters, the song still depicts it with this really beautiful poetry. With lines like wild sage growing in the weeds, depicting the beauty of his solitary existence amongst the ruggedness of his landscape and the city road he is walking along. New Monster Avenue has this jazzy drum and bass interplaying with each other, and the whole song feels very tense and has these sort of very beautiful and soaring yet modest piano melodies that really creates this aesthetic beauty. Half Dead beautifully captures what it means to actually try to move on with your life after something bad or a breakup. It's a metaphor for sort of moving place. It's about actually doing the work of leaving things behind, because it is work, and the metaphor it chooses expresses it really beautifully. The chorus has this beautiful, gorgeous, crunchy guitar, and a xylophone comes in on the solo, because of course it does. Yet the title track has this beautiful and empty feeling guitar that places you in such an evocative stillness. And the strings are perfect, and this is one of the best Mountain Goat songs. It just completely captures the feeling of loneliness. Woke Up New comes after In the Hidden Place and Song for a Lonely Giant, which are both good, probably not as good as the rest of the record. And Woke Up New is excellent. This bouncy guitar line carries a beautiful song about being able to breathe after the end of a complicated relationship. The first time I made coffee for myself, I made too much of it, but I drank it all just because you hate it when I let things go to waste. It's one of the earlier lines. It opens with, the morning when I woke up without you for the first time, I felt free, I felt lonely, I felt scared. God, it's so wrecking, these two verses, to just depict the ups and downs of getting over someone in really, really honest ways, in such like brutal and complicated honesty that I haven't really seen in anyone else. And the way John whispers with like a desperate force, the refrain, "What do I do?" It's harrowing. We see the protagonist get scared, running out into the street, getting hit with this blast of wind that bends the trees, and he realises he must prepare for the future to arrive. It's this almost magical realist moment of feeling just struck by the awe of nature, and something about the world around you is telling you what you have to do. And it's a wonderful story with a great emotional arc. The next track, If You See the Light, opens with loud trumpets before moving into this free and mellow shaker of a song with a lovely crunchy and warped bass sound. It's got these naked pianos that sound very gorgeous. I'd say overall this record is like a 7.5 out of 10. It's not essential Mountain Goats listening, but if you like the more luscious production of Mountain Goats records, you can't go wrong with this one.
But I remember when we shared a vision.
All Eternal Stack is their 13th record at number 11. Came out in 2011. Came with a set of limited edition tapes, including the demo Rotten Stinking Mouthpiece, which is about Lon Chaney Jr., and John has said it's his secret favourite Mountain Goat song. It's a bop. These demo tapes feel very demo-y, feel very lo-fi in a way that will please most Mountain Goats fans, which is interesting. This was a very divisive record. When the lead single, Goddamn These Vampires, came out, John Worster told Pitchfork that the fan reaction to the band's now 3-album run of more studio rock sounding records was so vile that he stopped reading the forum, which John O'Neill hosts on his own website. This is fucking stupid. The Mountain Goats have been doing studio albums since Tallahassee, which are some of their most rock-centric songs ever. And that was several albums before this. The actual single itself sounds like it could have come off the Sunset Tree, which was a fan favourite at that point. So I just don't understand where this is coming from. Do you guys hate bands growing? I've seen this time and time again. When fans just get set against the direction their band is taking, it doesn't matter what they do. Even if they went back and did an album in the sound that they liked before, they still won't be happy, and they will look for things to hate. and it's just really shit. Which is also really sad because Goddamn These Vampires is one of the best Man Goat songs that they ever made. It is beautifully meek. You have these very minimalist and driving hi-hats at the start and this lonesome guitar melody. The emotions are led, though, by the ebb and flow of this aching piano. Let this whole town hear your knuckles crack. This evokes the facet of the song about living with this brooding resentment, knowing that you have to crawl until dawn comes. On my hands and knees. I love the line, someday we won't remember this. Just, if you ever want to feel like whatever you're going through won't last forever, listen to this song. Whenever I sing along to this song, I cry. It's just so sad and beautiful and hopeful, and it just makes me want to keep going. The imagery of these people stumbling across two young savage things barely worth remembering. It breaks my heart, you know. Someday we'll try to walk upright. Someday we will try to walk upright. And you at home should remember that even if you're struggling now, someday you will learn to walk upright. Crawl till dawn, on your hands and knees. And the refrain of goddamn these vampires, or goddamn these bite marks deep in my arteries. Getting angry at your own trauma, you know. I relate to that, and I think a lot of people do. It's a shame, because nothing else on the album is that good. That's not to say that the album's bad, just none of the songs are as good as the opener. Birth of Serpent sounds like it could have come straight off of Tallahassee. It has a bass solo which is strangely satisfying, and a very luscious production. It's one of the most personal things John's written. Estate Sail Sign, which is the first out-and-out rock song on the record, is very rollicking. You have the line, I remember when we shared a vision, you and I. It is a song about hatred. It's a song about toxicity. It's a song about hating people, which I relate to. There's a line about every martyr getting their wish, which is just, ooh, that's mean. It's a song about feeling mean. John often lets those aspects of himself in when he writes, and it leads to some of his best writing. Age of Kings has this beautiful guitar line with evocative lyrics. I love the gap that John leaves in the chorus. Just lets you sit in the music. It doesn't need to be 4 minutes long, though. Beautiful gas mask. Some of the guitar tones and percussion choices almost channeled goth music. It's a highlight on the record. High Hawk Season brings in mournful barbershop quartet dirge background vocals. It's a bold choice. I'm here for it, but it's bold. Outer Scorpion Squadron is a highlight on the record. It's very heartfelt pianos and imaginative string arrangements. It feels like it preempts some of a Moon-Shaped Pool by Radiohead almost. And For Charles Bronson continues John's obsession with B-movie icons and forgotten figures of pop culture, and just writing songs from their perspective that give them an honest shot. The strong ending run is continued by Never Quite Free. Just an outstanding song. Amazing, luscious production, and Liza Forever Manelli is another immaculately produced, beautifully written cut to close out the record. All in all, it feels slightly less lyrically substantial than what's going to come later in Matt and Goat's career. It's an album that takes some unpacking, as a lot of the records in this era of their career do. Maybe I just haven't unpacked it enough to appreciate it. It's possible. What's next?
It's not a big improvement on the way things used to be.
Their latest album that we're going to be talking about today, Songs for Pierre Chauvin. Right, let's look at this. Pierre Chauvin was a French Hellenist and historian. What's a Hellenist? Hellenic studies is an interdisciplinary scholarly field that focuses on the language, literature, history, and politics of post-colonial Greece, post-classical Greece. How fascinating. Pierre Chauvin was one of them. He specialised on ancient Greece and Greek mythology, as well as Central Asian and the Turkish-speaking world, which makes sense. Given some of the lyrical content of this album, the way it blends mythology with what John was doing in more abstract storytelling at this point in his career. Although I would argue his new album at many points diverges from that. But you'll hear about that when that episode drops on Sunday. This was a return to the recording into a boombox mentality that John was exploring in his early career. Quarantine recordings, of course. This was, in a way, recorded out of not being able to record a new Matt and Goat's record. It's shorter than the other boombox records, graciously. It's only 10 songs and 27 minutes. And it's got just better writing than really most of the other boombox recordings. And I think it's fascinating to hear John's more mature, dense, abstract writing being done in his earlier style of recording. It really enables you to take in the totality of the career between them in a really visceral way. There are no samples on this one. thankfully. It opens with Owl on Raid, which opens with John literally saying into the speakers, it's called Owl on Raid. It's not the only time he'll do this on the record. It follows on from In League with Dragons in the way that it uses mythological storytelling and sort of stories of other, maybe fictional people to evoke very real and specific emotions. In this case, the story is that of a mythological battle in probably ancient Greece. It seems quite fictional, with a pagan tribe bringing a revered and worshipped king to it. Number 2, Until Olympius Returns, involves John saying, "All hail the mysterious gap," which is about a failed previous recording of the song. It's charming. I love it. It's cute. All right. It has this very driving minor chord progression with great acoustic guitar work. It feels like this is the best song on the record that could be adapted to the full band sound. Yeah, it would really work as this sort of very full-blooded rock song. But as it is, with the stripped-back acoustic recording, it feels like a revolutionary missive sent on pirate radio. Yeah, the song instructs you to blindly go along in the service of a tyrant, giving empty lip service to being blindly pleasant, but empty to everyone you meet, even though you're all serving evil, which isn't relevant at all. No, you can tell the song was released in 2020. This is a brief improvisation on the dance as another refrain, which sort of refers to the way that fascism places you as a cog in history, and this brief improvisation on the dance, you were just following your predetermined role in the system. This follows on from what John was doing In League with Dragons, in terms of unpacking fascism, but we'll get to that. The final line, you're just holding the spot until Olympius returns. It's a chilling final line that really evokes the mindset of fascism, the way that it relies on you believing in a pre-existing good period that is heavily mythologized. It's just in these few words, it captures all of that, all of those very complex ideas. At Last Gasp at Kalama has a great flow and a wonderful hook. One more summit than no more swan. I like to think that line's about Phantom of the Paradise, but I could be wrong. It won't be the only time John's written about B-movies. There is precedent, Your Honour. The song January 31438 it celebrates the verse in quite obtuse ways. An exegesic change the closer. It's the longest song on the record. These are all quite good. For the Snakes also, but I think they all together feel slightly insubstantial on the record. They all follow this template of melodic and breezy, with the trademark The Mountain Goat's intricate and evocative poetry. Like I said, I don't think there's a bad song on this record. I just think some of them are more inessential than others, although they're all worth listening to. The Wooded Hills Along the Black Sea goes to the Blues and Atlas rubric from All Hail West Texas of an automated drum track played along with these synthesizers and straight into the boombox. And it really works. It creates this wonderful, warm, intimate, crusty feeling of a memory from long ago of drinking whiskey around a campfire. It also has a fucking devilishly haunting synth lead. Their Gods Do Not Have Surgeons has this pathetic in a good way melody and riff. It's so soft. Background noise almost takes over the guitar playing. It just feels so slight and delicate, but it's beautiful, like a snowflake or like a rose made out of ice. And also, Going to Lebanon 2 is worth noting because it has the line, "Make it through this year if it kills you outright," which is, of course, a reference to this year on the Sunset Tree. What's next?
Masks hanging on the tomb.
2009's The Life of the World to Come at number 9. All of the songs are named after New Testament chapters, and in the concert film The Ryan Johnson shot of this record, at the beginning of every song they flash up on the screen what the chapters are. They just with the text of them, which is a lovely touch. The actual film itself is great. It features much more stripped back instrumentation for every song. I often prefer some of the arrangements on the film to some of the arrangements here because it just places a greater focus on the really beautiful lyrics. Although I love the production here so much, I'm really conflicted in that aspect. And the concert film was even done in one take, which is beautiful, and some of the striking compositions that Ryan Johnson does, just moving his camera around a track, around a piano, it's just really beautifully done, and I don't know how much practice it took, but I would bet lots. Pitchfork ranked this as their 45th best album of the year, too low. This is one of the more somber and stripped back Mountain Goats records. It bites a lot of analysis because it can be quite dense, but when you start unpacking the lyrics, it is incredibly emotionally rewarding. It just gently pushes you along to deliver emotional H-bombs. It opens with 1 Samuel 15:23, which has some pretty abstract poetry in the chorus. I sold self-help tapes, go down to the netherworld, plant grapes. This highlights how the album is dense, and context about what the song's about often helps, as does re-listens. John has always told stories. These are almost universally first-person perspectives about pretty complicated situations. You will catch a resonant line every now and then that moves you for unknown reasons, or like a meaning to a song that maybe wasn't intended, but you read there and you see there that really affects you. This is one of the most appropriate albums in which to read his novel, Wolf in a White Van, which I read this year. And how it talks about monsterhood, how it talks about hospitalization as well, how it talks about trauma, how it talks about social outcasts, which is something that John writes about a lot in all of his work. Psalms 42 has more brooding bassy drive. He has fixed his sign to the sky, and he has raised me from the pit and left me high. There's a sense of like profound religious saving here, but it treats redemption like some kind of strange, horrific occult ritual. Drum comes in after 2 choruses, and it just makes the song feel like it's revving up into a brick wall. When it rocks the outro, it explodes into transcendent joy. It's great. Genesis 3:23 tells the relatable story about coming to your hometown and realizing that your eyes have aged too much to see it as the same place that it was, even if it is just the same thing. And the song talks about seeing ghosts in the hallway. You know, as someone who's been forced to come home after a very long time of being away, this song is very relatable and depicts the experience well. Hebrews 11:40 tells the story of Mary Barbara's Black Sunday. Empathy for a villain here, a witch, as it were, murdered through religious persecution. Yeah, you feel like you know her story, and this kind of harkens back to some of the work he did with songs like this song about Mario, just taking fictional characters and telling the story with honesty and empathy. I love the lines like, if not by faith and by the sword, I'm going to be restored, or I'm going to get my perfect body back someday. Just really gives you an emotional core to that story in a way I really appreciate. Genesis 33 is 1 John 4:16. Teared up on my last listen to this song. It's also a grower. I learned to appreciate this song. In the holding tank I built for myself, it's feeding time, and I start to feel afraid because I'm the last one left in line. About when you pack yourself in with your own demons, you yourself take second priority to the trauma you've prioritized in building those walls. Someone leads the beast in on its chain, and I know you're thinking of me because it's just about to rain. This is beautiful. And then I won't be afraid of anything ever again. And go straight into wonderful strings that flip back and forth in a way that teases you with resolution. And it's good because the first half of the chorus, the first 2/3 of the chorus are a rhyming couplet, and then he sings the final line like you're expecting it to be a rhyming couplet, and it just denies you and goes into an instrumental piece. The second verse tells a familiar Matthew Goat story of being led out to execution or something similar. It breaks my heart with the line, and if the clouds are gathering, it's just to point the way to an afternoon I spent with you when it rained all day. It really highlights to you that the rain more represents his remembering of her, and the way that she represents to him some kind of better past that he'll never get back. God, I'm struggling to talk about it now without crying. This song denies you resolution in so many ways. It just leaves itself very open-ended and sad and empty and mournful and longing. It's very, very good. Matthew 25:21 is beautiful and stark with its guitar melody. It's a heartbreaking story of grief and hospitalization. It's a mood piece, 6-minute long story. Again, I have lyrics written down on my notes, and I'm looking at them and I want to cry. You're a presence, Philip. No. Listen to the song if you want to know why it's good. That's my job. Oh, God. I just read this out to you. I'm the last of something bright burning, still burning, beyond the cancer and the chemotherapy. I'm going to move on now. Isaiah 45:23. It's one of my favourite Mountain Goat songs. A lot of trans audiences have read their own narratives into the song, even though it's definitely not about being trans. This has happened again with their new single, Picture of My Dress, which I think is hilarious and beautiful. Ezekiel 7 and the Permanent Efficacy of Grace is the last track. It's the only track that deviates from this verse formula a little bit. And it's got one of my favourite The Mountain Goats piano lines ever. Sort of reaches, haunts, pokes, hides and waiting before jabbing at the top of the keyboard. I like stabbing at the heart. Overall, this album fucks. It's great. We're getting into my favourite records by them now, to be honest. I think everything after this, I would be very comfortable calling fucking excellent. I think the only reason this is below the next record is just... I have very recently fallen in love with the next record. We're in the burning throes of passion. This is one that has given me its secrets more slowly. And it's worth taking the time with. Absolutely. So, what is next? And number 8, In League with Dragons. Their last, up until getting into Knives, studio album. This took me a long time to love. I first listened to this album in full, doing what was my job then, which was gardening, cutting someone's hedge. And I just remember this profound sense of disappointment flooding over me of like, oh God, it's mid. It's mid. But it's not mid, it's really good. I've realised this now in my dotage of 2 years later. One year later, it was 2019. In my dotage of some time later. Don't judge me. This is one of the most conventional sounding mixes. Something like Done Bleeding or Sicilian Crest almost sound like musical theatre cuts. Yeah, and Possum by Night also evokes a more conventional, clean recording style. Many people thought this album was a concept album about D&D, because in many ways there are cuts on here that evoke fantasy tropes like that, so I understand why that might be. It features in what fans consider a trilogy of sort of concept records about close-knit communities, professional wrestling, goths, and D&D. But really, John doesn't like saying that it's a song about aging, but the original title for the song was Younger. So the original title for this album was Younger. He says it's more like an album about the bodies we used to inhabit, and about looking back on those bodies now and trying to reconcile the person you once were and the person you are now. So it's like aging in this one very, very specific capacity. Yeah, maybe this is why it took me getting older and seeing the world get shittier to appreciate it. I don't know. Like I said, don't judge me, I'm trying. It also Done Bleeding, which has this sort of soft alt-rock, reverby, palm-muted guitar thing happening, with these also very whistling background guitars that almost sound like Keen, of all things. It's a song about getting better. John has tied it back to his history as a drug addict and getting better after that. Younger, which was the title track of the record, I think was at one point the opening track, but they changed that too. It has these very rich and complex chords and rhythms, a very wonderful bass work. This is a throwback song to No I Can't from the 1993 cassette Transmission to Horace. John has said that he's playing a very, very similar chord progression, but he found a way to make it sound more interesting that he never would have thought to make when he was writing those songs in those days. So, he was younger, and now he's older. It's about finding those deeper textures in life, I think, when you're more experienced just at life. And it evokes this in a really wonderful way. It ends with an insane sax solo. The drumming's brilliant while he's playing it. The way he uses the ride cymbal, and he just plays it so energetically, and it's just a real cacophony of brilliance to end the song with. Passaic 1975 is a song about a very specific Ozzy Osbourne concert in 1975 in Passaic. Again, you have to have some knowledge of who Ozzy was to appreciate this song, but when you do, you kind of get it. References like Slip on My Kimono that I bought in Japan should evoke this era of Black Sabbath for you. I love the sort of pre-chorus line thing. Tonight Passaic, tomorrow the world. And just the chorus of I want everyone to get high in different capacities, like tell someone else I want everyone to get high. It's just so fun and bouncy and joyous. It's just so full of life. And although the song does understand that this is maybe an unsustainable lifestyle, with lyrics like there's an assault on my lungs and my liver. That's why I drink tea, kids, says the alcoholic. Yeah, and also references to blacking out in front of 10,000 paid customers. and sometimes waking up coughing up blood. It's good. It's a good song. It's kind of depressing, very fun. Clemency for the Wizard King is lyrically not one of my favourite Mountain Goat songs at all. It has this glorious bass sound that comes in every now and then, just to give it a real drive and grit and groove. And I could listen to that song that I'm mid on 10 times over just for that bass sound, and it's very minimal, but it's so satisfying when you notice it. Possum Pie Night almost feels like a classic jazz show tune in many ways. It's a song about coming to terms with the reality of who you are and the body you've grown to inhabit. It uses the metaphor of being a possum, being okay with being like a trash animal. You know, all you parasites climb aboard, and the refrain, grow fat and grow old and go blind and be content, is just a real beautiful evocation of this sentiment. The title of the song is this sort of delightful little country-style ditty, and Doc Gooden brings in more country elements as well. It's got this amazing groove with a wonderful guitar riff. It's about a real-life baseball player who played for the Mets. And Going Invisible too, in a word, is fucking beautiful. It sits in rage. It eschews catharsis for this almost Buddhist acceptance of rage, fantasizing about burning everything down and sitting in the flames. And it's, whereas other songs on the subject matter take a joy in catharsis, this is just a song about honestly confronting that dark aspect of yourself, that you just have something in you that requires you to self-destruct. And then the final tracks on this album fucking rule. Cadaver Sniffing Dog deals with the aftermath of a murder, metaphorically, accepting that there's nothing you can do to help. You know, bring in the cadaver sniffing dog. You can't rescue them, they're dead already. It's a metaphor for a relationship gone bad, I think. Let the relationship die. It's got amazing drumming on it and a fucking stunning guitar solo. Some of the, probably my favourite Mountain Goats guitar solo. Not that they have many, but you know, it does its job, it matches the tone, and it gets out quickly so the rest of the song can happen, and it's just some amazing playing. Yeah, it's beautiful, it's eerie, it's chaotic, and it's just technically accomplished. An Antidote for Strychnine has lyrics that feature the sort of mystic occult rituals that someone goes through to try and save someone from poisoning by strychnine. There are two interpretations of the song that you could take. One is that the protagonist of the song did the poisoning and he's now guilt-stricken to do it, or someone else poisoned them with strychnine. I don't know why I keep saying strychnine. With strychnine. Strick 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You have all of these sort of celestas and organs trying to create this very haunting sense of eeriness. But the most haunting aspect of the track, that this question of who did the poisoning is open-ended. John definitely thinks that the protagonist of the song did the poisoning, but I think the reason the song works is that you don't know, is that it's open-ended, and that haunts you trying to figure out who you identify with more. Again, there's amazing drumming on it. What do you want me to say? And then the closer, Sicilian Crest, is the most explicitly musical-esque track here. It's a good closer, it's fun. It also begins to sort of unpack fascism in a very interesting way, looking at, in this time of wanting prophecy, I think is the line. And it just gives you all of these empty symbols and asks you to follow along with them, and then you have to interrogate that aspect about yourself. And it's really fun, with amazing hi-hat work. As many good songs are on The Life of the World to Come, these songs are just more immediate, and there are as many good ones, and they just feel more whole and more finished and more polished. So I'm probably always going to come back to this one first. It's probably why it's high. What do we have next?
Mercy for the Diaz brothers.
And number 7, Transcendental Youth, the Mountain Goats' 14th record, released in 2012. This album focuses on outcasts, for example, Judas, the biblical Judas, in the song Cry for Judas. The first track, Amy, aka Spent Gladiator 1. It has these acoustic guitars and bass drums that are blown out in the mix. And like many Mountain Goats lyrics, it's lots of variations upon a theme. Living recklessly is sort of driven by this kind of dark drive inside you. And this song investigates that from many different angles. Do every stupid thing that makes you feel alive. Play with matches if you need to play with matches. And it talks about getting tattoos, and when people mock them, getting them in even more garish shoes, which is just funny and really empowering as an image. Cry for Judas is probably the funnest song on the album. It contains the album's focus on self-destruction and on outcast. My god, the trumpets on the whole album are incredible, but on this song specifically, Oh my word! This is actually a very trumpet-heavy album in the Mountain Goats back catalogue. I feel like John was like, let's make a trumpety album and let's use this instrument to the best capacity we can to make a really fun record, and they did that, and it's great. Yeah, there's a really scream-along chorus that I always like in songs, and the Mountain Goats don't do them a lot. When they do them, they're really good at them. The Diaz brothers refers to Scarface, these two characters, where they're mentioned, and then Tony says, "Hey, the Diaz brothers," and the next time we see them, they're dead. When John was watching this, his baby, 3-month-old baby that he was watching Scarface with, smiled when they mentioned the Diaz brothers. Yeah, so we wrote this song about the Diaz brothers, and it's so fucking fun. It's so fucking fun. It again almost has like a musical theatre type feel to it. It's almost structured melodically like a musical theatre song. Again, another scream-along chorus that we love to see. Bent Gladiator 2, sequel to the opening track, takes the opposite view to the first track in many ways. It contrasts against the aggressive self-destruction of 1 with the messaging of stay alive above all else. And that's kind of beautiful to me, anyway. This album is unique in the Mountain Goats' back catalogue. Like every album after this in the list, it serves a unique purpose in your Mountain Goats listening. It'll scratch a different itch than any other Mountain Goats album will, which is probably why they're all ranking so highly. What's next?
Yeah, we're all here, chewing our tongues off.
Okay, number 6, We Shall All Be Healed, in 2004. This is the first album they made after Tallahassee. It takes much more of a conventional rock direction, which pissed off a lot of fans, but it's full of bop, so I don't give a shit. It preempts the Sunset Tree, with some of the more fictionalized accounts of John's teenage years, whereas the Sunset Tree addressed his youth in more direct ways. There's a post on Mountain Goat's site about this album I'll read out. All the songs in We Shall All Be Healed are based on people John used to know. Most of them are probably in jail by now. For context, John used to be, to the best of my knowledge, a heroin and meth addict. He had an abusive stepfather. All this informs the album, but also the title, I think. Because, hopefully he's not like that anymore. He seems to be a very happy father at the moment. That's his image, cool dad. The opener, Slowest Vultures, opens quite normally before chaotic strings come in, and John just starts singing halfway through a bar. One of the highlights on the album is track 2, Palm Called a Yanja, or Yashna, Palm Called a Yashna, I think, which is the story about robbing the safe at your work and buying a lot of meth and going with a group of people and getting high. And it's really, really fun. But the heart of the song is more dark than that. Such as the line, "I dreamt of a factory where they manufactured what I need." And yeah, this highlights the fact they're all drug addicts, but it also highlights the fact that they're chasing some elusive emotional fulfillment that they're never going to get and can only be achieved in dreams. The metaphor in this story is that the house that they're all in is addiction itself. It's this thing that they can't escape. It's the trauma, it's the people, it's the structures to keep you going back. It's a bop, but it's filled with hints at doom of their scenario. Such as a line, "It will be too late by the time we learn what these cryptic symbols mean. I dreamt of a house haunted by all you tweakers with your hands out," in which you see the supernatural dream image of all of the people he knows is begging for more and asking for more and asking for more, because that's what addiction pushes you to. Every couple minutes someone says he can't stand it anymore, and then the refrain, "and the headstones climbed up the hill," which is this haunting image of time passing and just losing people. Just the inevitable tragedy of what they're doing with their lives. And that's just the second track. Linda Blair was born innocent. Again, looks at forgotten B-movie icons in John's work. Probably part of why I'm really attracted to it. It starts with guitar harmonics that almost remind me of the 1999 Blur song Coffee and TV. Before it transitions into plucked strings and rolling bass to provide this luscious instrumental palette. Hungry for Love, Ready to Drown has this aching, Up the Wolves preempting folk string arrangement. It just is so beautiful. Letter from Belgium has this sound where the guitar and the bass are really compressed in the mix. The riff on the acoustic guitar is great, and it really pushes the song forward. And John is singing this really sort of Dylan-esque speak singing. It's just this really grinding rock bop. The Young Thousands, it's a line that gets stuck in my head all the time. It's this rough and anarchic sort of vibe driven forward like a rickety car threatening to explode. And the lyrics are very threatening. The delivery is also quite threatening. Here they come, the young thousand. Your Belgian Things is a nice ballad. It's a nice change of pace to have a ballad in the mix. Mole tells the story of someone almost dead, chained to a hospital bed, and the instruments that they're plugged into. Genuinely a traumatizing story. Very, very sad and deathly. You are positioned as someone looking through a hospital mirror at them, catching a glimpse, potentially, of your own future. On the song Home Again, Garden Grove, the voice is almost like throttled in the mix, like it was on one of the beatbox recordings. And then the next really interesting song is The Closer, which, as John so eloquently puts it, the story of the pigs that run straight away into the water and their great triumph. The actual name of the song is Pigs That Run Straight Away into the Water, space, triumph of. It's just a ridiculous amount of fun. Yeah, it has these repeated lyrics and this driving, shuffling beat. And like all the Mountain Goat songs, this fun masks terrifyingly sad lyrics. Right, so that was We Shall All Be Healed. Let's talk about number 5. Let's talk about top 5. What have we got next?
Born down in El Paso, where the tumbleweeds blow.
Oh god, I love this record so much. Right, so Beat the Champ from 2014, their 15th record. Yeah, I never thought I'd cry at a concept album about professional wrestling. This has more of their traditional folk rock from earlier on in their career, with a more instrumental bent on songs like Unmasked. John has said that this is less about wrestling, more about navigating complex interior spaces, which I get. It's all about the masks we all wear and the battles we are all forced to fight in public. It opens with Southwestern Territory, which is sort of an understated opener. It's a real tone setter of a chorus. Climb the turnbuckle high, take 2 falls out of 3. Blackout on local TV. It's a really beautiful piano melody, and it sets the small scale of the canvases upon which these stories are painted, while also showing the understated yet huge emotional stakes of all of these stories. Sort of fighting to maintain humanity through just living a hard life that refuses to give you what you want. So, track 2, Legend of Xavier Guerrero. It's one of the most fun songs the band has ever done. Daniel contrasts the life of Xavier, projected on TV with his turbulent home life, saying, watching him on TV, I need justice in my life, here it comes. It's saying to his stepfather, you called names to try to get beneath my skin, now your ashes are floating on the wind, and compares Xavier being supportive of his son outdoing his own fame in wrestling, to the short and toxic relationship he had with his stepfather. And yeah, it's a very good song. It's very sad. It's also very fun and bouncy. I love the chorus. Look high, it's my last hope, with the sort of egg rattlers going. Ton of fun. Track 3, For an Object, has these almost cheeky trumpets. Now, of course, it's on multiple levels. On one level, it's a fun ditty about stabbing someone in the eye with a foreign object. It's also a song about getting lost in your own persona, in your own roles in life, and letting the demons that drive your anger take over your persona, and then not being able to separate the persona from yourself. Animal Mask is a jaunty yet ghostly melody. Yeah, it contrasts a over-the-top persona with the small and large tragedies of life, causing you to eventually retreat into your public face, which in this case is an animal. And Choked Out is probably the loudest, most up-tempo song you get on this record. It captures the raging, cathartic feeling of slowly destroying yourself, knowing that's what you're doing. Heel Turn 2 captures the peace in letting the darkness in. The protestations of I'm not going to die in here conveys the desperateness feel in a situation like this. It's a side of myself that I know all too well, and this song touches on a very ugly side of myself that exists in all of us, that needs to be regarded, come unhinged, get revenge. It ends with a haunting 3-minute piano segment, just leaves you to absorb the emotional punch you've just received. Stabbed to Death Outside San Juan feels sort of loose and freeform, but when the chorus comes in, it has these strings with these very hard breaks, very compelling. And then in some of those breaks, you will get jabs of escalating strings that feel shocking, confronting. In this way, it plays very interestingly with silence. Werewolf gimmick, again, captures wasted lives. The werewolf gimmick shows how we become healed in real life. We just have something in us that causes us to lash out and reject help. Just something in us that can, like a werewolf, turn us into monsters at a moment's notice. And then Unmasked, it's my favourite song on the record, but listening back to the whole of the discography, is a contender for my favourite Mountain Goat song. It's at least in the top 5. The refrain, "I will reveal you," haunts me. I'm not exactly sure what this story's about. I think it might be about suicide in the ring. Really, though, it's about the end of something sordid. Between sort of two people, "I will reveal you" feels like a threat, but also like crying into a hug with a loved one. It's a song about self-hatred, about being trapped, about saying goodbye. It might be the album's best song. I think it might well be my favourite Mountain Goat song of all time, potentially. Okay, now we are going to talk about record number 4.
So I think about that, and then I sort of black out.
Sunset Tree. I know you're all saying it's too low. Fuck off. It's a great record. Yeah, of course, this touches on John's childhood domestic violence in very frank ways. It's a very frank record. The title refers to a Samuel Butler play, The Way of All Flesh, in which a character Theobald beats his son for being unable to pronounce the letter C in a hymn that begins with the line, "Come, come, come to the sunset tree." I want to read you the liner notes from this album that I don't own, but I have access to the liner notes anyway. He says, "This album was made possible by my stepfather, Mike Noonan. May the peace which eluded you in life be yours now. Dedicated to any young men and women anywhere who live with people who abuse them. With the following good news. You are going to make it out of there alive. You will live to tell your story. Never lose hope." Yeah, so this album means a lot to a lot of people. I luckily haven't been in an abusive household. If that's you and this record means a lot to you in having that experience addressed and talked about and processed, then I'm so happy for you. I still think the record is one of the best records ever made. I just think, like I said at the beginning, this is more a list of which albums of theirs resonate with me the most than which are their best. Because that's in the end the only way you can really judge quality, I think, is how much it just resonates with you personally. I have a lot of notes on every song on this record, but I feel like the best way to review this record is to say that Up the Wolves and This Year, two of the best songs ever written by anyone ever. And all of the other songs are, of course, going to pale in comparison to them, especially when I prefer alternate recordings to many of the songs on this record, like Broom People, like Hast Thou Considered the Tetrapod, like Dance Music. That is not to say that the record doesn't hold amazing treasures in almost all of its songs. Just This Year and Up the Wolves show two completely opposite sides to trauma that together form one of the most compelling, comprehensive, affecting pictures of struggle I've ever encountered. This Year, yes, it's joyous, but it's only so joyous because it's so frank about how bad things can be. Yeah, I listen to that song whenever I need to feel happy, and I listen to Up the Wolves whenever I need to accept my sadness. That is a song that is just angry, and the final verse of I'm going to bribe the officials, I'm going to kill all the judges, it's going to take you people years to recover from all of the damage. In the context of the rest of the song, it just so perfectly shows how, like, cyclical trauma, how we are all turned into monsters by our damage, because at some point, the only way we can feel like we have had our bit is by destroying everything. That's the only way we can come out on top. And even then you're not satisfied. Yeah, I've not been abused, but I have a lot of trauma and a lot of baggage that these two songs touch on very beautifully. Listen to the rest of the album because it's really good, but it's never going to get too high for me on the list, because when you have two perfect songs and the other songs on it aren't perfect, you just always want to get to those two songs listening to the record. You always just want this song to end so we can get to the songs we love, as good as those songs are. So I'm going to scrap a lot of my notes. This album's really good. Every song is worth listening to. Listen to this record. I just think I've done this record justice talking about those two songs, to be honest. It's so good. It's such a good record. Okay, number 3.
Woke up afraid of my own shadow, like genuinely afraid.
Heretic Pride. So I rather like this record quite a bit. Some of you might be surprised to see it so high. I don't know why you would be. It slaps. Again, we are seeing probably the pinnacle of traditional folk mixed with traditional rock on this record. It opens with Sax Roma 1, which evokes like noir films and almost like a post-war cinema atmosphere of like sleazy sex, drug smuggling, betrayal type smoky bars, like Inherent Vice kind of films that's growing back to, like them. The Lady from Shanghai, that shit. This is framed by the chorus, I'm coming home to you with my own blood in my mouth. I'm coming home to you if it's the last thing that I do. Yeah, that just shows someone fighting through darkness to honour the love they feel for another. That's actually a great theme of the record, is it is full to the fucking chops with beautiful fucking love songs about just how much you love another human being. And as dark as this record can get, part of why it works is that it's soppy. This is a sap of a record. For example, track 2, San Bernardino, which is one of my favourite Mountain Goat songs. It's a story of two people stopping in a motel and giving birth in the bathtub, and he sprinkles petals over the girl. It's so beautiful, and it's so lusciously produced. And they just love each other very much, and they'll never be alone in this world, no matter what they say. We're gonna be okay. You are brave, you are splendid. God, it's just so good. So good. And the strings are gorgeous. Yeah, Heretic Pride was one of the first, the title track, Heretic Pride, was one of the first Mountain Goat songs I fell in love with. The way the guitar and the drums interact with the rhythm of the piano, sort of piano playing on the offbeats, giving this sort of inevitable march forward. This song is kind of ambiguous, but it's sort of about this religious figure who's taken out for execution, and he mocks the faces of the people he goes past, elevating a lowly monster to the level of Messiah. It's fucking gorgeous. John has described Autoclave as one of the darkest songs he's written. I understand why. It likes something like How to Embrace a Swamp Creature. It's a song about someone unconditionally loving you when you are yourself a monster. And you're a monster in the emotional sense in that you're horribly damaged, but as in a lot of Mountain Goat songs, it is manifested in external monsterhood as well. And the way that he captures the Norse on something like So Desperate, you know, you listen to that and you're like, I feel this kind of internal monsterhood and I wish I had this much love in my life. I also want to highlight the song Lovecraft in Brooklyn, which takes the perspective of Lovecraft in the way that his hate would you can't put being a fucking racist down to trauma, but a lot of his social alienation that was a key component in his worldview was driven by the extreme trauma he'd suffered in his life, and find this empathy in that life experience. You know, I think the song agrees he's still a hateful man, but I love the way in which the song understands Lovecraft as a person is more than just a hateful person, and that some of his hate is in everyone, that potential for just hating everything you see, realizing everyone around you as a monster because you are deflecting the monsterhood you see in yourself. It's quite a complicated idea, and it's beautifully expressed in probably the Mountain Goats' most explicit rock song. Like, the riff on it is jagged, and the drum and bass work is driving and pulsing and very technically accomplished. And I love the way the strings on this song just jab, and the way that the ride bells are rung just to shock you and keep you awake and keep you going. Tianchi Lake is one of the Mountain Goat songs that you'll find a lot in something like Tallahassee, where it's just a beautiful depiction of a moment with luscious instrumentation. It was like a nature ballad, you know, describing the beauty of the nature of the world around them. And the album closes with Michael Mercer Resplendent, probably the luscious production with like orchestral, huge, sweet. It subverts horror structure in many ways, with a sort of no resolution type thing. And the house goes up in flames, no one emerges triumphantly from it. It's stripping away the artificial fantasy of some songs where you always win every time, where you just say, just sometimes you lose. And that's okay. Now, we're getting into albums I didn't make any notes on, because how can I, when I loved these records so much?
I hope you die. I hope we both die.
And number 2, we are going to talk about Tallahassee. Now, we've already done a whole episode on Tallahassee, so I'm going to be quick. I don't know how quick I can be, but I'm going to try. Yeah, so, Tallahassee, concept album about 2 people in Florida. It's this story about their imploding relationship, and it's told with so much humanity and love for these people. Even though it punishes them a lot, it evidently has a lot of love for their personhood and doesn't judge them for who they are, and tells it in this distinctly like working class way where like, yes, these people are white trash, but that's okay, and these people are worthy of love and of having their stories authentically told in spite of that, and you kind of love these very hateful people by the end of it. Yeah, if you want to know my more in-depth thoughts, go watch that episode. But I just want to say that Game Shows Touch Our Lives is one of the most beautiful and haunting songs I've ever heard. No Children is this dancing in the flames, joy in hell type deal with some of the luscious production they had done up until that point in their career, and it's got some of their best rock songs as well, like See America Right and Oceanographer's Choice. So it's a wonderful structure where Tallahassee feels like an opening scene setter and Alpha Rat's Nest feels like bowing in front of a closing curtain, and it is just one of the most immaculately put together, emotionally devastating records anyone has ever made. Now, again, if you want to know my full thoughts, we already have an episode. I'm trying not to be redundant here. Okay, record number 1. All Hail West Texas. This sounds so fucking crisp, by the way. I know you're like, what's the point of having a crisp vinyl or a record that was recorded straight into a fucking boombox? Don't challenge me. I want it. God, All Hail West Texas. This is not just my favourite Malcolm X record. It is my favourite record of all time. I think this is their best lo-fi recording. I think it's his best songwriting. I think just why I love this record is that more than any other record, every time I listen to it, I love another song a little bit more. This time it was Source Decay. But let's try do this record justice. The overall feeling of the record is one of heartbreak, because this record is so fucking traumatizing, but also one of joy and of fun and of love. And you have a good time with this record because of John Donio's just quirky, bouncy, wonderful personality. The lo-fi recording, when done right here, it feels like a warm hug, a mug of hot cocoa. It feels like a blanket. It feels like, I don't know, just peace, dude. Like, I just love it. Obviously, open to the best ever death metal band in Denton. What is there to be said about the song has already been said. It captures a young naivety of making music in a really beautiful and charming way that only endears you to these people in this band that you know never would fucking make it anyway. And you love their ambition and you're rooting for them. And then when... I watched a movie about the West Memphis 3 today, so that was a bad movie. But this is a good song, and it does that kind of satanic panic narrative justice and really shows you how it ruins people's lives. The Fall of the Star, High School Running Back, track 2. It's very short but packs a lot of story. It's it's a real emotional punch as well, where you have this guy who, due to circumstances outside of his control, and through making immature choices, he's a teenager, winds up in prison from dealing drugs, from being a star football player. And again, it's just told with so much humanity. I love the line of you made a whole bunch of brand new friends people used to look down on. And I love how that just captures the way that young people judge each other when it's pointless, that when you actually get to know these people, when you're humbled in that way, they're pretty cool, you know? And it's so sad that when he is made a better person, the world punishes him for it. And, you know, of course, it's this kind of like rocky, folk punky riot. It takes you all through its 2.5 minutes, a pretty dense story. But when you realise what's happened, it fucking sucks, dude. And John said that this is a political song against mandatory minimums. Yeah, fuck mandatory minimums, honestly. He was right to say so. Third track, Colour Your Cheeks, another political song about finding camaraderie in, you know, maybe disreputable people, but people who will give you a home. No matter who you are. It's a song about embracing everyone, no matter who they are, where they come from, giving them a home, which is a radically political act. And I don't think this song shies away from that. The silence as our trademark makes its presence felt. It's just so beautiful to feel like you can go to a place where no one needs to say anything, but you know that it's a home. You know that it's sanctuary. And you can just go there and people don't ask who you are. They just accept you. And you can just be there, you know. That's so powerful. Jenny, a really beautiful love song. John has said that Jenny is the person who's always around when he's not going so great. It's never there when it's going well. I think we all know someone like that in our lives. Maybe I am that person in other people's lives. God, I hope not. But it just feels so free. The pirate references are, it's funny, but it just, it feels like riding on a motorbike with the wind in your hair and feeling free. Fault Lines. Fault Lines is this jangly ballad, full of air and lightness about, having everything but still being really fucked up people. I've got Concrete in the Fuel Lines, both of us do. The song Balance is this really off-kilter, kind of scary song. Feels really strange. It puts in a really strange emotional place. It's kind of an abstract song in itself, but it's composed with such imagination, and the chords are gorgeous, and it puts you in this emotional place that you can't put your finger on, but you do relate to, and that's a really astonishing musical achievement. And I love the moment where he starts to play this B minor seventh, or maybe it's just a B minor, and you can hear him not quite get his fingers down on the frets correctly. I love that they kept that take. It just makes it feel so organic and beautiful and lovely. Pink and Blue is a really kind of dense but clear story about this woman who has twins that she just abandons because her life is going so awfully. It's pretty sad and fucked up, but it's really beautifully written. The poetry is so gorgeous, and I just want to sit in the worlds that this creates. Riches and Wonders is my favourite song about how love feels. I just want to highlight the line, I am healthy, I am whole, but I have poor impulse control. And I want to go home, but I am home. Because as someone who has fucked up a lot of relationships, I relate to that feeling of running from what's comfortable. I have found home, but I'm somehow going to fuck this up because I have something in me that can't sit still. The Mess Inside it's a heartbreaker. The Amanda Palmer cover of this as well is really fucking good. But this song itself is one of the Mountain Goat's best songs. Of just knowing that you're putting off the inevitable, and you both know what you're doing. You both know that the relationship is fucking dead, but you can't face that. You can't look the other person in the eye and say, the problem is both of us, and we both fucked this up, and there's nothing we can do, and it's done. Jeff Davis, County Blues, it's just a song about driving, but it's the feeling of solitude, of loneliness, of being resigned to that loneliness and just accepting it and rolling with it and living this lonely life. And that acceptance of your fate is so kind of heartbreaking, but it's also comfortable. There is a comfortableness in just accepting your situation. There's a peace to that. There's a sanctuary to that really emotionally affects me. Distant Stations is also really good, but I want to move forward a little bit and talk about Source Decay, because this is a really heartbreaking story about having this person that you used to be very intimate with, that you used to have a beautiful relationship with, who sends you postcards that remind you of better memories that really fuck you up when you think about them. And the story unfolds itself over more verses than normal, slowly, at a kind of relaxed pace. And this is so well put together and so beautifully written. And when he says, I smile a bitter smile, it's not a pretty thing to see. I think about a railway platform back in 1983. The song has just ripped out your heart, stomped on it and ate the pieces by that point. And the album's nearly over by that point. Absolute Lythrops Effects is also really good. Just a fantastic closer to a perfect record. And that's all I have to say about this perfect record for now. I think I'm going to stop pushing myself to say more because I've just talked about 18 records in a row and I'm tired. And if I talked about everything good about this record, I'd be here all day. I implore you to listen to this. I implore you to check out the Mountain Goats, my favourite band, who made my favourite record. Now, if you want to hear what I think of the new album, you can listen to the episode we're doing next week. We're also talking about Clipping's new record that I also think is pretty fucking outstanding. That will come as no surprise to anyone. Mountain Goats. Listen to them. They're great. Peace out.